Well, for the guys who remember just a little bit, this will be an update for you. For all of you who haven't heard anything, this will be completely new, and I'll try to make it as magical as it was last year. Okay. This is slide. There we go. All right, last year, this first slide was a giant picture of the rock band Kiss. And it was my mechanism of telling you how I will keep you engaged. And I thought this year it would be more fitting to use this picture because this weekend I actually proposed and got engaged. Thank you, thank you. Not self-serving at all, using Pubmatic's time to, at least I didn't propose up here. But this material is a little bit dry. We're talking about numbers. We're talking about how to quantify the financial value of a technology. It's a little bit dry. I'll do my best to keep you guys engaged. Do me a favor, try to stay engaged. If you guys have questions, jot them down. If we don't have time for Q&A, I'll be here after. I'll be glad to answer them one-on-one. As I said, some of the objectives today. I'll keep you engaged, stay engaged. We'll highlight the updates. And if you haven't heard this before, you will leave with the ROI story of Pubmatic and a business case framework to kind of plug your own numbers in to tailor that ROI for yourself. All right, so some of the stuff we'll talk about today, we'll go through quickly just to set the stage of what is total economic impact. We'll step right into the results and then we'll dissect it and break it down with some of the details. So this is a little bit different, but basically, this is our third-party independent research firm slide that tells you that, don't read that. 3 things. 1, this is a summary, ladies and gentlemen. There's no way that we can fit a 25-page case study in 20 minutes. So this is a summary. Any details that we missed today, any calculations that you're wondering how we did them, they're in the full case study, which brings us to the second point. This is a case study, remember. We built this case study off of 4 interviews this year with publishers and 4 last year. And so if the numbers don't exactly jive, don't exactly match your organization's capacity, size, impressions every month, don't worry, you can plug your own numbers in. We even encourage it into the financial model, and they'll make a little bit more sense. And the last thing is, we kept editorial control. So we wrote what the research told us and what the customers told us, not solely on what Pubmatic told us. So just to set the stage quickly, what is total economic impact? Well, it's Forrester's methodology. It's our way of quantifying and articulating the value of technology. And we look at 4 components: benefits, costs, flexibility, which you can view as options for future value. And we overlay it with a layer of risk. How we do it, as you can guess, we do primary research. We speak with Pubmatic stakeholders. We speak with their customers, their publishers, and after that, we aggregate all the data, we quantify their experiences, and put it into a financial model, and speak that story through a case study. And today, you'll have a kind of abridged version of that case study. So stepping straight into results. If I had to boil down a 25-page case study that we wrote into 1 line, it would be, Pubmatic generates incremental ad revenue, sets foundation for programmatic sales, and puts mobile monetization in motion. For those of you who were here last year, you'll notice the main difference between last year's study and this year's study is the mobile monetization part, and which we'll talk about in just a sec. In terms of numbers, what does this mean? Well, over 3 years, for the composite organization we built, which is the aggregate, the representative of the 4 interviews we did, the return on investment of using Pubmatic is 338%. Net present value, around 6.2 million, and payback period is less than 1 month. Compared to last year, that's a 4% uptick in ROI, about 2.3 million increase in net present value, and no change on the payback period, less than 1 month, which is maintained still great, and kind of also a characteristic of software as a service platforms, because there's very low initiation cost. So we'll break down some of this in terms of how that ROI happens, how that net present value happens, and we'll talk about all the benefit areas and all the cost areas that lead up to that. Before that, though, we told you that we interviewed 4 customers, and just quickly, we're not going to go into who those 4 customers are, what their names are, but we interviewed 4 of them so that we could take data points, quantify their experiences, and take some attributes in terms of size, capacity, what their digital sales team looked like, before Pragmatic, after Pragmatic, did they work with an SSP before or not? So we took all those attributes and grouped them together. And the 4 that we spoke with, there was a print publisher, there was a blogging community, a magazine, and European media research company. What's important, though, is what we came up with afterwards, the Composite Organization. Let's give it a name. And it is an error. Do I control this? No, I'm not moving the mouse. Not yet? Too soon? This would be a great spot to advertise right now. Brought to you by Twitter. I'm taking bids. Who should I be looking at? Who's responsible? Like, who should I be staring at? Over there? Well, let me tell you a joke I heard last night. No, I'm sorry. I just got back from a proposal. I don't know any jokes. Actually, the joke's on me. Well, I see the Pragmatic guys on the back panicking. It's okay. I'm sorry my slides broke your system. I hope you are engaged. Thank you. This was not my plan to have silence be the engaging mechanism. I think the system wants to go to lunch. You're gonna have to change my time to like 12:15 after this. I don't know how many more one-liners I can come up with. Any comedian spotters in here? I could really take an improv class. No, I haven't planned the honeymoon yet. I really do want to go to Fiji. If I do a couple more of these speeches, maybe for Pragmatic and hopefully not their competitors. Nice. Good. I was just going to bore you about how I proposed, but let's get back to this thing. It's less boring. We talked about that. Yep. And we went to there. And we were talking about this composite organization we built. So we interviewed 4 companies. We took their attributes, and we said, let's give this representative organization a name. And we said Loudnet. Also not self-serving because I only put my last name in the name of this company. So Loudnet is a North American publisher engaged in news broadcasting, print magazines, blogging communities. Again, this is a representative organization, so it doesn't actually exist. It's our way of telling a story that 4 customers experienced. We don't need to go through all the attributes. I mean, some of the main things that you should notice: serves 500 million ad impressions a month, 35% and 50% on top of it over years 1, 2, and 3, and you'll get your average CPM around 81 cents to 90 cents. Depending on the volume you sell, that bottom number, around 900K, will be a little bit different for you, but it really depends on the inventory. For Loudnet, their inventory was around 187, 175,000 over the first 2 years. Now, why does that number drop? This is a better kind of graphical explanation of what they were doing before and what they did after and what the incremental looks like. So that 900K is the incremental. Why does it drop in the 3rd year? Well, that leads to the next slide, which is private marketplace. This has really kind of evolved over the last year. And publishers are telling me that instead of, selling all their discretionary inventory, a lot of it, on open market RTB, they're moving more of it, not all of it, a little bit more than last year, to private marketplace. And that's really evolved. Thus the evolution slide. So this is your major update number 1. Over the past year, publishers have used it a little bit more, become a little bit more comfortable with it, committed to it a little bit more. And so instead of last year, they said maybe 100% lift on their CPMs from open market RTB to private marketplace. This year, they're comfortable and confident to say something like 4x lift, right? So take that 60 cents, put the 35, 50% on top of it, and then you get your 81 to 90. Now, times that by 4, and you're at 3.2, 3.6, $3 to $3.06, which is about half of what Loudnet does in direct. Just remember, lower volume, higher margin, but still lower volume. In Loudnet's case, they took about 15 to 25% of their monthly inventory and put in and was able to monetize it through private marketplace. As I mentioned, take the 81 cents to 90 cent figure, put 400% on top of it, and that's likely what you can project for private marketplace. All right. Now let's throw pennies at a smartphone. Major update number 2, mobile revenue. This wasn't here last year, or it was starting last year. Out of 4 customers we interviewed this year, all of them were excited and giddy about it, okay? 2 of them were actually engaged in it, and one of them had really strong data to back up what they were saying. So, early stages for early adopters. Everyone wants to do it. They want to learn more about it. They want to know what the vision, what the roadmap is, but not everyone is engaged. When we say low volume, we mean right now it's low volume sold through programmatic. That's all. But everyone, as I mentioned, is excited and giddy, so it's high potential. In terms of the math, two of the publishers said over 50% of their traffic comes from mobile, and which is why they projected this growth from 35-cent CPMs to 50 to 70, that rapid growth based on what they believe was doable and their goals. But as I mentioned, that bottom line, 25, 35 million impressions, still a very low volume if you were taking a proportionate of how much traffic they're getting from mobile. So looking back over the past 2 years when I interviewed PubMatic and when they told me about ad violations and security, and they told me that they have someone sitting in front of monitors to monitor ad violations, this is the first picture I get in my mind. Morgan Freeman standing in front of a wall of monitors looking at Gotham City. And that's basically what the picture that painted for me. Now, this is major update number 3, but the story stays the same. Ad violations harm brand and uniques. And PubMatic not only stops, but prevents them. Last year, what we showed was this kind of empty chart. How would you put a value to ad violations? How would you put a value to losing traffic and losing page views? Well, still this year, none of the publishers actually track this metric. So it's not something we can fill out. But this is a framework you guys can take home and fill out if your organization tracks this type of data. And it's probably important to track. But what we got this year is one of the publishers said, well, there's another way we can look at this. Ad violations cause complaints. Complaints cause people to open tickets. And when they open tickets, we need to resolve those tickets. And that costs money. So if working with PubMatic can reduce those complaints by 90%, then we're doing 90% of ticket resolution work. And that's how they valued it or quantified it. Again, I mean, not a very large number, but depending on what kind of organization, what kind of publisher you are, how many complaints you get a month, this number could be a lot bigger. And then the last benefit area, relationship management efficiency. This is essentially being able to go from a publisher that works works with 12 ad networks to 2, and also being to realign your organization at the same time, and taking those efficiencies and taking those salaries and man hours that come with it. So just quickly, for this, I would advise take a look at your organization. What does it look like in terms of how are people aligned? What do they do? What are their salaries? Can I not manage 12 ad network relationships and instead do 2 or none? And if I do that, are there any salaries that I can maybe put somewhere else and have them do something else? Or is it a contractor that I may not need a full-time equivalent of? So that's where kind of the efficiency and the value comes from on this. All right, so those were all our benefits. I want to quickly touch on kind of the costs, the other side of this equation. Generally, the first 3 costs are pretty easy. It's a revenue share, and we use 15%. The fourth one is implementation and maintenance, and that's basically how much time did it take for you to start your engagement with PubMatic? Was it 1 week of preparation? Did it take you 2 weeks to build a business case? How about the tags? Add those hours up, and that's your initiation cost. And then year after year, if you had, as some of the publishers we talked with had realigned some resources, and those resources had new responsibilities specifically related to maintaining the PubMatic platform and PubMatic relationship, or dissecting data they get from the analytics engine, that's their job. Take those hours out and quantify it, and that's your maintenance cost. All right, you have your benefits, you have your costs. Last 2 areas, flexibility and risk. Flexibility, as I mentioned, is your option for future value. You buy something today, you expect tomorrow I will have the option for incremental value if I do a little bit more or pay a little bit more. And that's what this is. Things that those publishers were looking forward to. Maturity in the mobile market, different pricing tiers, vision and advisory from PubMatic on what's next. Integrating a data management platform in, and coming to events like this. Actually talked about during one of our interviews that this was actually valuable, networking with peers and partners. In terms of risks, there are implementation risks with every technology implementation, things that cause your costs to be higher than you expected. There are impact risks, things that cause your benefits to be lower than you expected. So all the numbers that we showed you before, when you adjust for risk, you're going to make those costs a little bit higher, and you're going to make those benefits a little bit lower to be a little bit more conservative. And how do you do that? We have a very complicated way of doing it. It's called triangulation. And we really just take, how likely is a scenario going to happen, and how is it going to impact our numbers? And then we average those 3 numbers. What you should do is really just think about how comfortable you are with each benefit or cost area, that it will either rise or fall, and then adjust based on that. That's the easier way. All right, and just to wrap it up now, again, over the past year, there's been an uptick, up 4%, 338% ROI, $6.2 million net present value, and less than 1 month payback period. And based on those highlighted areas, those major updates in incremental revenue from private marketplace, mobile revenue, and brand value retention. And that is the total economic impact of PubMatic for 2013.